Hi, my name's Phil Walker Harding,
And my name's Matthew Dunstan.
and we're going to answer some questions posed to us by Thames and Kosmos. Let's begin. So,
Indeed.
I'm reading from a document they've sent us. It says interview questions for Matthew and Phil, game designers supremo.
Well, that's a good start, I think.
Supremo.
Or Supremi or whatever the.
I feel like a pizza. Okay. You met each other at Protospiel. How many expos or conventions do you try to go to per year? And are there any that you consider a must attend? Well, first of all, I have to take issue with this question because I don't think we first met at a proto spiel. I think we first met at a mutual friend Simon's house. Isn't that right?
No, I don't think so.
It was proto spiel then Simon?
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I mean,
It's all a blur.
this is in the hazy memories of about what was it, like 12 or no more than that,
2010?
something like that. Yeah, 10 or 11 years. So yes.
Well, the reason I think I thought we met at Simon's is because I always remember the story of giving you a lift home from Simon's house after game night, but my car couldn't reverse. So it was tricky kind of getting out of the car parking spot. Anyway, enough about that. The actual question is, how many expos?
Well, we should say what Protospiel is, maybe, to start with, because I'm guessing quite a few people don't know what Protospiel is.
That's a good idea. Do you want to answer that?
Well, you've been to me. I've only been to one, so I guess
you were so good. You didn't need. You just went straight to publishers after that.
Well,
Protospiel, Days of Wonder.
Well, the way it happened, for those who don't know, obviously we're having this conversation across the world at the moment. I'm in Prague and Phil's in Sydney in Australia, but that wasn't always the case. I used to also live in Sydney, and Protospiel is a playtesting convention, kind of mainly for designers, that was held in Sydney, and I only started designing just before I left Sydney, really only for a year. So I was only in Sydney and a designer for one Protospiel, which I attended and met Phil or maybe saw him for the second time. We'll never know. It's lost history.
We should ask Simon, and then we can link the dates up and figure this out.
Indeed.
Anyway, so Protospiel is an event run by Board Games Australia, which is a sort of group of people in Australia who give an award for board games here, and they run game design events and other industry events. And it used to be a bit more regular, but now it's sort of become an annual thing. It's sort of basically a Protospiel is an event where budding designers bring their prototypes along and they play each other's games and give feedback, sort of like an unpub that other places have.
What's the attendance like these days, Phil?
Well, the last one I went to would have been, I think 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. And they've sort of transitioned it into a bit of a kind of a workshop style thing. So they have limited numbers and you bring your games and someone gives a talk, and then there's like feedback from industry people. So it's a bit more of an intensive, I guess, rather than just show up and play games kind of thing. So I think the last one I was at was probably there were around 20 people with games, and I gave the talk, and then I played a bunch of the games and gave feedback. And the standard was pretty high, I thought.
Yeah, because I think the standard of designing in Australia and like in Sydney in particular is definitely changed in the last 10 years since I've left, right? A number of people designing.
Yeah, well, there wasn't much happening at all. Yeah, back then.
Yeah, that's really encouraging, actually.
How many expos or conventions do you try to go to per year? And are there any that you consider a must attend? Well, for me, living in Australia, getting to conventions overseas is a bit of a big thing, big upheaval, massive flight with all the cost and time that goes into that. So it's a bit of a different question for me than Matt, I guess. For me, I think I've sort of settled on one big international convention a year. So usually that's probably going to be Essen for me, because it's a great chance to meet up with all the different publishers in one place. But I will probably go to a local one here as well. There aren't too many happening in Australia, but I generally try to go to LFG in Sydney or something similar to that each year. What about you, Matt?
I would probably go to somewhere, I guess, 3 or 4 major conventions. I go to Nuremberg every year. So that's sort of a trade-only show in Germany. So that's in the end of January or start of February. I go to Spiel in Germany in October. I've been going to Cannes, the French game festival, sort of that's late February, I think. I've gone 3 or 4 times now. I didn't go the last year, but I've gone to that pretty much every year for the last few years, and that's been very good. I've gone to Gen Con a few times, but a bit like Phil, even getting to the States from Europe, that's obviously a much larger cost. And the UK Games Expo, which I've gone for the last ever since I moved to the UK 10 years ago, and that's also grown a lot. Actually, that's probably the most changed convention. Well, which is what we're giving this talk for, of course. For the UK.
We are currently at that convention.
Yeah, we should. We'll cast our minds into the future. But I can remember when my first expo would have been 2012. So yeah, 10 years ago, basically, or 10 editions, and it was in a small Masonic lodge in sort of middle of Birmingham, and there must have, attendance would have been more in the sort of high hundreds, low 1,000 odd or so people. I'm always part of this Playtest UK, which is a group of designers, and we offer a sort of a playtest zone, a little bit like Protospiel, I guess, at the expo, and I've sort of been doing that ever since. So I would say, yeah, in Europe, definitely where it's a lot easier, because actually the costs for those conventions, I think, something actually like Spiel, in a way, is actually not that expensive for me. It's the flights are fairly cheap. Accommodation isn't too bad, although it's getting worse. Plate and Cannes and things like that are very easy. I don't know if anything's absolutely essential. It depends what you want to get out of it. Depends what. Obviously, if you're an English speaker, it's a little bit easier to go to somewhere like Spiel or UK Games Expo. Cannes is still a little bit more francophone at the moment, but they're getting better. And it depends how, what you want to do. Do you want to go and show off your designs? Do you want to have a booth where you're going to show off your game? Do you want to pitch to publishers? I think we'd probably both agree that Spiel is the best place to probably pitch to publishers, just because there's so many of them there at the same time, not necessarily because it's the most amazing environment to be shouting over all the noise in the halls and rushing from place to place, but it's the most convenient and sort of most efficient for that. But I think if you're just starting out, I think a lot of these smaller conventions are just as good a place to pitch things to people. And there are even smaller ones in the UK, for example, like Aircon, which I've been to a few times, and I pitched games there, and that was definitely a more relaxed, and publishers have a bit more time, when they're smaller events, so that can be quite good.
Okay, Matthew, does your knowledge of chemical looping, thiocyanate frameworks, and Y-doped Li2ZRO3 impact your game design?
Someone's like looked up my Google Scholar page or something.
Now, I have no idea what I just said. What is chemical looping and what is thiocyanate?
Well, they're 3 separate things. I mean, they're all from titles of scientific articles I published. So yeah, for my real job or other job, I'm a research scientist at the University of Cambridge, and in materials chemistry. And chemical looping is essentially a method for carbon capture and storage. So it's, you take a material and it absorbs carbon dioxide, and then you release it later, and then the material does it again. So it goes around a loop. So that's what's called looping. So I don't know how much it's helped me with my game designing necessarily. I would say actually probably undergraduate mathematics is probably the most relevant thing. I always enjoyed discrete mathematics, which is a sort of a branch of mathematics. Things like graph theory, which a lot of game designers would be quite sort of knowledgeable of without even necessarily ever having studied it. my first game, Relic Runner, was kind of based on a famous discrete mathematics problem, this problem called the traveling salesman problem, which is where if you have you might have heard of it before, Phil, like where you have or like a postman is also the traveling postman problem. So if you have a postman and you have a set of streets and a set of houses, what's the most efficient way for the postman to move around where he visits every house but doesn't use any road twice or something like that. There's also like the towers or the bridges of Königsberg. Is it Königsberg or Konning bridges? These 7 bridges. I think it's a town in Germany which has 7 bridges, and it's this sort of famous problem of like, can you use all the bridges without using them twice? And it's actually impossible because of the way they're. So anyway, there are definitely some interesting things that I think are present when you look at particular styles of games. You see them present, and other things like probability, obviously, and things that you don't necessarily have to go to university for. But the chemistry is interesting, and I have made a few educational games. I made a game for the synchrotron here in the UK, which is like a free print and play game for children to learn about what the synchrotron does, what kind of science you can do. So you can do projects that are actually directly related to the science that's done there, like finding new battery materials or discovering new drugs or working on various engineering projects. And you also get a bit of a sense of what doing experiments is like. We're trying to teach kind of help children experience the idea that like failure is a normal thing in science. So you have a little experiment deck and you flip over cards. When you try and do an experiment, they're either successes or failures, and it's a little bit of a push your luck kind of thing. And if you get 2 failures, you have to stop, and then you don't get anything, or you get half success. But it normalizes the idea that not science isn't just sitting and coming up with a great idea and everything works. That's quite normal that you try a bunch of stuff and it doesn't work, and then you try other things, much like game design.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say, like, iteration and failure, like, yeah, that's game design.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of corollaries between the scientific process and game design. I like to think of making a prototype and playtesting as kind of like an experiment in a way, and you're trying to observe what goes on, and you're trying to understand what are the cause and effect, what's the problem, what's how, and then you tweak a parameter and you see what the new effect is in the next experiment and things like that. So yeah, I think there are definitely some influences, I guess, but I'm not sure if I sit down and in quite a sort of absolute way and think of science in games.
Next question. Your new adventure game, The Volcanic Island, involves another designer, Chihiro Mori. How did that come about? And is it very different working as a team of 3? Well, yeah, so the third adventure game scenario is about to come out in English. It's called The Volcanic Island. And it actually, I guess it was quite a different process to the first 2, because the first 2 were pretty much, we were just trying to figure out how the system worked. And I went off and designed the dungeon, and Matt went off and designed Monochrome Ink. And I mean, we inputted a little bit, but we kind of did our own thing a little bit. And then the team at Kosmos got on board and helped develop them. Whereas the third one was sort of, the lead was taken by Kosmos. So they came up with the main scenario idea, and we were involved and we tested it and helped. But Chihiro Mori really kind of came up with the concept and really kind of did by far most of the work. I will say, and I hope I'm not breaching any contracts here, but Chihiro Mori may be a nom de plume of someone who works at Kosmos.
Yeah, I don't think you're breaking too many obligations there. So
it's a cool name though. But yeah, so this third one was he wanted to kind of push the system in different ways and test how it would look if there were 4 chapters instead of 3, if there were branching chapters and things like that. So it's
simply the most kind of complex one to date in a way, in its structure and its length, and there's a lot more in there, and definitely more variance in your. It's probably the one that'll be the most rewarding to actually play through again, possibly, because you really can.
You can have totally different endings, totally different resolutions. And yeah, I think we felt a bit more like consultants and testers and sounding boards more than we felt like designers on this project. That was kind of the way it was set up to be for number 3, which was interesting and different. But the 4th one, which we've just finished up, was kind of like merging all of that together. So we were all involved the whole time, which was a whole other experience. But I guess we'll talk about that at UK.
Yeah, you can see the rest of the questions. I don't know.
2021.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting though, because it I think it's the first time for both of us really being involved in a project that has multiple kind of products and really reworking things and actually it's a lot about exploring what you can do. How do you not only how do you keep it fresh for people, but what's possible, what's even fun, how do you surprise people, but at the same time you don't want to kind of completely throw people, if they already enjoy the existing adventure games. You want there to be some sense of familiarity. So it's I say even now, like we've been involved in four products so far, but I don't think we even know the limits of that yet. We're still exploring that, and there's also I think there will be more people involved in future ones. It's not just going to be us. There will definitely be other people involved, especially on the writing side, where it's not, neither of us are writers, and Kosmos already does a lot of work sort of ghostwriting some of the stuff. We write quite a bit, but then there's editing and ghostwriting, and that will probably become even more expansive in a way in future products.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I've never worked on a game series like this, so yeah, seeing like a whole publisher like mobilized to set up a series and then push out different products in that series. It's really, it's interesting and different to just submitting a game and it's done. And you might talk with 1 or 2 developers, but that's it. This feels much more like there's a team at the publisher and we're kind of forging ahead, not quite, not knowing exactly where we'll end up, but trying different things and exploring the system. And it's been cool.
And I mean, we're quite fortunate that the response has been good enough that we can do that, so it's thanks to everyone who has played the games, has talked about them, that has all helped mean that Kosmos feels like it's something that they want to invest in, and that's really great. It feels nice to, it actually is a really different experience, because so much when in game design is you're sort of shooting in the dark a little bit. You're sort of coming up with an idea by yourself, and you're hoping, you don't know who's going to publish it, you don't know what it'll be like, and you hope to find somebody who will make that game. But then to change that to idea that we're all together, publisher and designers from the start, trying to work out what are the best products. You're really thinking about different things you wouldn't normally in a normal sort of design. So which is cool.
Okay, next question. How do ideas come about? Do you wake up in the night with that light bulb moment, or is it more trawling through ideas until something sticks? Well, for
do you want to take this one first, Phil?
I've almost never had a light bulb moment for a game idea. It's almost always I look through my notebook and I decide that a jotted down idea is worth prototyping, and I prototype it and I try 10 different versions of it, and slowly I find that core idea. I guess sometimes I get light bulb moments on the highest level, like wouldn't it be cool if there was, a card game that felt like Seven Wonders but played in 10 minutes or something. But even then, like, those ideas are so broad that it isn't until you get down into the nitty gritty.
Everything's in the execution.
It's a bit of a lame analogy, but I feel like designing for me feels a bit like panning for gold, in that, you got this pan full of just mud and dirt and you're just swishing it around, hope, with some sense of what you're doing, but then sometimes you find gold and sometimes you find mud.
I think projects, for me, games are a bit different. I think I probably started a lot more where you have ideas and you start working on something and you see what you find, and as you said, if it works or it doesn't. It's interesting now, especially actually with narrative games. I'm starting to make some other narrative game projects, and with the adventure games too. It is a bit of a different experience though, because I think that higher level vision is actually, in some cases, you can tell in a way very quickly whether that is a good idea or not, because you don't need much to sort of separate out. You need a twist, or you need a particular way of delivering a story in a new way. And sometimes that actually the best way is if you can describe that in one sentence. If you can really tell people, this is how this works. What if there was an open adventuring game where you could combine any two items together in a free way, or like a point and click adventure. So it's interesting. I think some projects kind of form in the playtesting. When you make the first prototype, you don't know if the idea is very good necessarily. Sometimes, or you have a bit of a nugget, and actually it's in the playtesting, in the iterating, that you actually find the final game, which you didn't see from the start, probably. Like it didn't look like that.
Yeah.
Whereas there are other projects which are, you kind of see it from the start a little bit more clearly, and then you're just kind of refining towards that part. But I think for ideas themselves, they're sort of a dime a dozen in a way. I think if you, once this is something you're doing a lot, you'll just, things come to your head. I actually really get ideas from just playing other games, reading about games. I don't know if I'm such a great innovator. I'm more an iterator. I think I see things that other people have done and say, well, can I do this in a different way? Or I've seen something in that, like for the adventure games, right? They're kind of taking from a different context, like from the video game world. We're trying to take something of that into tabletop. So sometimes that's also a great source of inspiration.
What do you consider to be the best, in the sense of cleverest / interesting rather than best selling, game that you have been involved in?
Best game. That's I mean, for me, I guess it's probably Elysium. Involved. I guess the question means that we designed or that we were.
I assume it means design, unless you've been involved in other ways that I'm unaware of.
Yeah. No, I think something like Elysium or all the adventure games. I should stay on brand.
Yes, the adventure games.
There's some sort of like black something gets beeped out and then we put
Elysium's a good game.
Yeah, I think it's the kind of it's the sort of game I personally enjoy, that style of game a lot, and I feel like it's a hard nut to crack, and I feel like we did in that case.
And great, I think I like product design, great art, like the whole package was pretty great.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that all together. But actually, I think adventure games would definitely be in the top echelons of things I've worked on. Just because I think, again, that, as you were saying before, this idea of sort of a lot of people working together to make. I can't concentrate what I say.
Pearl is wanting her nightly snuggle, so just carry on.
It's a tough life, This is just coming up with new games and stroking your kitten.
The life of a game designer.
Yeah. I'm not sure if we're giving the right impression. What about you? What's your sort of the best?
Ooh, yeah, I think I put it in a few different categories, like best product.
They've chosen categories.
Best. Yeah, it's really hard. I think games that I feel just like clicked and came together in a great way in the finished product. I feel like Barren Park and Gizmos are two that I think I'm pretty proud of, and I think just like came together as I hoped they would. I would say Sushi Go, I don't know how, somehow caught a little bit of lightning in the bottle. So there must be something about that like that. Yeah, I guess I feel like I managed to capture something in that little game. So
I'm sure it's down to your first European distributor that made sure that that game was a great success.
that was Matt. So Matt, when I first kickstarted the first edition of that, I think I had 200 odd UK orders, and and I posted this big box over to Matt, and then he shipped them out individually.
You had pre-packaged all the envelopes within the
Yeah.
bigger box, we should say. So
Yeah.
you didn't give me too much. Well,
Yeah,
much
you just had to dump them in a post box.
I mean, I didn't have a car. I did have to lug that box all the way to the post office, but yes.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that.
I should have kept. I mean, it's actually it was. I should have kept more of the. I shouldn't have been so generous in giving away those first edition boxes, because for me that's my favorite. I actually do have. I still have it right. It's actually very. This was not planned at all, but it just happens to be right next to me. But yeah, I still have the original Kickstarter edition.
Hey.
But I should have kept more of them, because actually this was my favorite. Definitely my favorite edition of all the ones that have come since. So maybe we might see a new version with the original art sometime, or like a new.
I doubt it.
Oh.
I don't think so.
I was trying to get like, because that was Meredith's, right?
No, that was actually me.
Oh, it was you. Sorry.
Yeah. Meredith did Dungeon Raiders.
I see.
Yeah, which was the game I self-published before this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't really answer the question. Yeah, I find it very hard to answer best game, because so many.
Which children do you? Which child do you love the most? Kind of thing, isn't it?
Yeah, well, yeah, and different reasons for different games, but hopefully somewhere in there you got our answers. What is your favorite game? What is your favorite game that you've been involved in?
Favorite. As opposed to best.
Yeah, I feel like this is the if I can rephrase the question a little bit, I wonder if the gist is well, for me, when I think favorite, I think, what do I want to play the most, out of my games? How about we go with that?
Sure. Okay. You go first.
Yeah.
I went first last time.
Well, I don't know if you agree with this, but some games, when they're released, I feel like I don't really ever want to play that again. I played it so much, I know it inside out. I don't need to play it again. I've experienced that game too many times. But then other games, somehow you create them and there's a little bit of mystery or a little bit of uncertainty in the system, and you're like, "Ooh, I actually feel like I could actually explore that and play this and see what happens."
You obviously didn't play test them enough, Phil. That was the problem, really. That's why there's some mystery.
So, for example, Sushi Go, done with it. But
Sushi Go Party.
Oh, Sushi Go Party. But Baron Park, even though it's quite a simple game, I'm not that good at it. And I could, and Gizmos as well. I'm not that good at those games. And I feel like there's a little bit of I could try something new or see a different combination I didn't see before. So I think those two are the games I would most likely play of my own. That I guess I enjoy playing. Yeah.
I actually don't know what my answer would be to that question now that I haven't really.
Do you play any of your own games?
Sometimes it's interesting. I don't. It's not something I feel a really weird thing. I don't know if you have the same feeling. It's I don't know. There's a sort of a weird modesty, I guess, about it. If I have a game night, I always feel a bit weird to bring out a game that I designed. You know what I mean? Especially because I'm usually the person who knows the most about games in a given game night. So I feel like I'm always wanting to recommend these other great designs that you should try, or Sushi Go, great games to try out. If you're getting into gaming or whatever. I'm never really suggesting my own games, which is not to say that I don't think they're good games, but it's just a weird feeling of mine. So I actually don't, and yeah, I think there definitely is a feeling a lot of the time where I have just played something to death, and the corollary to that is because I want to always learn about new games, I always want to play different, there's so many games which I haven't got to play or haven't got to experience, and I want to kind of learn about it. All that being said, I'd probably say something like, I like Professor Evil in the Citadel of Time, I think is actually both of the cooperative games, that and Roll for Adventure. I really enjoy Roll for Adventure, and I think they're both games that have enough like variability in how they actually play out. That you can kind of keep coming back to them, and it's always a fun experience. And the only other one I'd sort of, which I myself haven't actually played for a while, but I love Costa Rica. The unfortunate thing is I think it's best at higher player counts, like 4 to 5 players, and I haven't had a chance to do that for a while. But there's just it's something. There's a really fun combination of just playing at the other players. That not too many of my games are like that, and I love that kind of experience. And maybe the adventure games. I mean, yeah, sort of, and of course, then the adventure games. There's this funny in between that, like, I can't really play it with anybody because you just feel like you're acting. It's like, oh, I wonder what you should do with that item. I wonder.
I gave the dungeon to my godson for his birthday, and I kind of moderated it. Like, I didn't play. I wasn't a player, but I kind of like taught them and just helped them play through it, I guess. That was fun. Yeah, they're funny because once you know the answers to everything and the secrets in the story, you can't really experience it again. But I definitely know what you mean about suggesting your own games. I don't keep any of my own games in my like visible game collection.
They're hidden in the dungeon or the cell.
Well, they're like in my office or something. So sometimes when people come over, they're like, "Oh, did you design all of these?" I'm like, No. I designed just a few. They're in the other room. These are like these are the real ones." That feels a bit like that. Okay. The boat is running aground, and you can only take one game to the desert island. What do you grab?
Well, we've both answered this question before, haven't we? On another podcast.
Yes.
Which I think we've both been part of.
Yep.
It'll be interesting if we remember our answers are inconsistent, because at this moment I don't remember what I chose.
I chose Race for the Galaxy.
Oh yeah, I definitely would have had Race for the Galaxy in my 5. I don't know if it was my 1, although it could have been. Yeah.
It's like, I think it's not typical of a game of the sort of game, like it's not, I don't like many games like Race for the Galaxy, but I think why I would take it to a desert island is because I've played it, hundreds of times, and it still feels there's new things to find. So I think the pure level of replayability in a small deck of cards and some tokens is the magic of that game for me.
It's almost a lifestyle game in a way, isn't it? Because there's something about that familiarity, and it's certainly a game that I only play with a few people because we've both played it for so long. It's not a game I bring out to teach people or anything. Although I probably should. I should probably spread the love. But I do always tell people when I'm thinking of teaching them, I'm like, you will not like it the first time you play it. It will not go well. You won't have an idea of what's going on. It will all be sort of overwhelming. It will be the second or third game until you understand.
It is that awkward thing where if you play it with a small group a lot, you sort of leave other people behind with like your familiarity, which isn't something I normally really go for, but there's just something about it which
I would agree that would be up there. I'm trying to think, because it's interesting because I have actually been playing a lot. I mean, I guess for me, it's interesting because it depends on audience, because if I would hope that I'd be on desert island with my fiance and she doesn't like Race for the Galaxy. So another game kind of like that I would probably put would be something like Innovation by Culture, which is again another in a similar kind of vein that is what can you do with just 120 cards. And I think that's why I said Elysium is what I think is my best game, because I that genre of game like Race for the Galaxy, Glory Jerome, Innovation, I'm trying to think of other sort of games in that sort of special power card game kind of thing. I feel like when people hit that style of game, they do it well. I think that's my favorite, like how much game you can get from this little deck of cards and some tokens or something. So I think that would be, I probably said something like a pack of cards. I probably cheated and said like you could play 70 games. But I'd bring an iPhone with all my favorite board game apps. But then it would run out of charge, and then that would, it wouldn't work.
Yeah, good point. Okay, how are your games stored at home? Color-coded, by play mechanic, by size, in a chaotic evil pile?
Well, I can actually show it because I'm literally sitting next to it. So it's kind of a mess, to be perfectly honest. I mean,
that is a chaotic evil pile.
Well, yeah, because I sort of pull things out and then I sort of then don't bother to put them back. I put them on the rafters above it or something, or I put them on the floor.
No, actually, that is actually pretty well organized.
Yeah, I mean, it's not too bad, although there are like games behind the games, and like it's not, I need a better solution for like Sushi Go size boxes, for example. But yeah, I'm somewhere in between, I guess. I try to do better.
You know what I use for small card games? Go to
use the wine rack stuff.
No. I don't know if you can still get it, but the IKEA, the Billy bookshelves, one of these bookshelves from IKEA, they also do, well, they used to anyway, do a CD rack, which is, it's as tall, but it's super thin and has heaps of little shelves going up.
And it's the perfect dimension for those,
it's
two boxes.
Yeah. So that's, and because I have heaps of those.
Actually. Yeah, I should. That was it was much more chaotic before I moved to this apartment about 6 months ago. Before that, I've taken my board game collection through, I think, 4 countries in 10 years and different, and probably 10 moves in that time. So it's been, this is my first IKEA Kallax bookshelf. That was my most looked forward to purchase when we moved to this apartment. For the first time I could have.
You earned that Kallax.
I know, and it's yeah, because and it's funny. I don't know if you because you maybe haven't moved as much. There are definitely games where I look back, I'm like, why did I sell that game? I had and there are other games that you hold on to, and you're like, am I really going to move with this game 10 times? Like I've got there's one I have a copy of. I'm not sure if I told you the story, but in Cambridge, I have almost mint edition of Robo Rally with like the pewter kind of
Avalon Hill one.
Yeah, and with some of the punch still not unpunched. Actually, some of the cards still in plastic. And I found it in Cambridge. I took a train late at night. It was like 10 p.m. or like 9 p.m. Just near the train station. I was walking down the street. Somebody had a table out the front of their house. Nobody there. Just sign on it, like take whatever you want. There were a few books, and there was this. And yeah, I just picked it up, and I went. And 10 minutes later, it poured down with rain. So it would have been destroyed in about 10 minutes, basically. And it's just
the most amazing story.
I know it is, and I feel like
I'm glad you. It is your duty to carry that game forward through time.
I know. But you also don't. It's this weird thing of like. I'm not a big fan of Robo Rally. I also put it out there. It's not quite my style.
You have to take that with you. That must be buried with you.
The grave, like yeah. Anyway. So what's your collection like? Is it
so behind me here, this isn't my collection. This is just the overflow that I haven't played yet, stacking up in my room. I played some of them. My actual collection's out there. It's organized roughly by like size, because I don't really know how else. Unless you have a massive game room, you kind of just need a scrunch them in there.
You just have to fit them in as efficiently as you can, basically.
Yep. So it's pretty much size, yeah. Okay. What do you bring to the partnership that the others don't?
Well, you bring a certain amount of professionalism that I clearly like, so that's always good.
I don't think you should be. I think you're quite professional. I mean,
no, it was a bit of a joke, but it is funny that you're much better at graphics and things like that than I am. I think, or like that you make prototypes that look a lot more professional, I would say.
Oh, thank you. What do you bring?
You should have an answer straight away, Phil.
Ooh, I'm just reading it. You definitely are better at like troubleshooting and like idea generation. So like, I think I can see there are points where if I was designing a game alone, I would just be stuck for months. But you always seem to have a little trick up your sleeve, some sort of little workaround or creative way forward.
I mean, that's also an advantage just designing in a pair. You know, I think it's the same with me. Like, I definitely, if I'm working with someone else, it's a lot quicker. You know, the other person, it's just, you know, people have different approaches.
No, I feel like you seem to store in your brain, like, little like problem solving tidbits. Like, I've seen this problem before. Here's 7 ways we could solve it. Yeah.
No, well, I guess it's. I mean, I like to keep up with. I mean, I think it's lucky I can keep maybe more details of other games in my head, and yeah, it's funny if you've seen that kind of same thing before, you know how to. I'm not sure if it's the most inspired way of game design, because I think the more interesting things are where you don't really know the answer and you have to it's really frustrating. And you don't have it straight away, and I think you tend to make better things. But no, and I think, but I also I think you are very good at also like kind of seeing an idea through, like kind of trying to get it to its best possible point. I don't think I necessarily have always the patience to, you know, the corollary to always having a lot of ideas is that you're sort of jumping around and wanting to try something different. But I think you've got a bit more patience to kind of see it through and you know, really give it its best chance to succeed, I guess.
Well, yeah, and on the flip side of that, you have 10 games coming out every year, so I don't know how you
just work with other people, you see. That's the thing.
Yeah, but you can keep things in your head. What is the longest time it has taken for one of your games to be released?
Well, I know the answer for one of yours. Is Imhotep the longest one?
So yeah, so Imhotep and Cacao I designed around the same time in 2010, and Cacao was released 2015 and Imhotep 2016. So that's 5 and 6 years. So that was a long time, and that's because they were kind of passed around publishers for a little while, and a lot of contracts give publishers a couple of years to kind of sit on a game before they publish it, and that's what happened a couple of times. So it just took that long, which it was tough waiting that long, but you know, that's the industry.
It worked out well in the end, actually.
I guess they came out at good times because they both did. Like, they both seemed to land at times when people were like up for that sort of game. So yeah. What about you?
I think so. The game, Chocolate Factory, which came out last year, that probably was designed, I think, in 2013 or even 2012. Wow. And that was a similar sort of story. I remember pitching it for the first time in 20. I think I'm pretty. 20. Hold on, 20. It would have been 2014 actually. I pitched it, so we must have designed it in 2013, I think. And that definitely went through a few publishers, and the same sort of thing, like sort of held on for a while. So yeah, similar kind of, I guess, about 6 years or something like that, 5 or 6 years. It's definitely probably the longest one. There's a few games which still haven't been published, which are getting close to that record, and I hope that it will. You know, who knows? I mean, but this, I don't know if you've had the same. You know, this with COVID and everything, it's also changed the kind of timelines for a lot of projects. So
yeah, a lot of things have moved from 2020 to indefinite.
So, yeah. And it's hard to know what will happen. But,
yeah. In what ways are game publishers different? Who is your favorite?
Kosmos, definitely Kosmos. Kosmos
yeah, I guess they're different in that, you know, obviously they have their own style of game that they're trying to find and then put on the market. So that's one obvious difference. And for me, I definitely look to work with publishers who I know will be passionate about the same types of games as me, obviously. So that's why I've kind of worked with publishers like Kosmos, because I know they're into, you know, family weight games, but that are really engaging and interesting. Like that's what attracted me to playing their game. So of course I was going to pitch to them. But I guess like the way publishers work once you've started a project with them is very different too. You know, some publishers just kind of go off and print the thing you gave them, and some publishers are like, okay, we've signed this game, now let's redesign it from the ground up, you know, and really like develop the heck out of it. So I think that's a big difference. And I think Cosmos, because they're quite a big publisher, I guess they have the ability to put like a lot of people on a project, a lot of time into a project. So it's been fun working with them because of all that development time you get to do. Yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, it definitely, there is a different, I mean, and also companies, as you said, like they're very different sizes as well. Sometimes it's just one or two people, sometimes it's many, and that obviously changes sort of the amount of effort. And I think also the other difference is some publishers are only releasing one or two games a year, and others are releasing many games a year, and that changes the focus of a publisher. I don't know if I have. I think I'm sort of open to sort of work with any publisher, I think, who sort of takes pride in their product, and really I think it's more about that you just have to have a plan. I think that's the main thing I sort of value. I'm valuing more and more, I think. You know, we all talk about there's all these too many games and, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And I think you just want to have the sense that the publisher has a plan of what they're going to do with the game, whether then that includes development and product design and illustration and marketing and all these things that I'm terrible at. So I'm glad that I'm working with a publisher who knows what they're doing. But if you don't have a plan for those things, then it can be a pity, because, you know, you can work on a game for a very long time as a designer, and it's always great to see it published. But if you realize that sometimes it's worth waiting for, you know, that the best publishers can give it the best shot, essentially, to be seen by, not only to be seen by the most people, but to have the best chance of connecting with those people as a game. So people like Kosmos, who did a lot of work in thinking about how can the adventure games, how people can approach them, thinking about tutorials and the app and all these things that we didn't necessarily think about, and that has made the game and the product just that much better and given it the best chance. I do think about people like Space Cowboys, who I was incredibly lucky, and I've had a completely sort of probably a distorted view of what it is like to work in the game industry, because my first game was with Days of Wonder, and my third game was with Space Cowboys. And so, you know, you start with both publishers who really don't release many games, who have such experience in product design and development. Even though they're both reasonably small companies, they're only like, you know, handful of people, but the amount of experience they have and that knowledge of how to make a great game, you know, I was really, really fortunate. So, you know, that's just something very valuable, and they're not the only people who do that, and more there are publishers who I think are doing amazing work, and that I really want to work with. Actually, you know, you start to, you know, I'm sure if you're the same, sometimes you look at games, you're like, wow, that looks amazing what they've done with that. I really want to pitch that publisher. I want to work with them. I like what they're doing in that space, for example. So that can be good.
Who in the game world would you like to meet, or who were you most excited to meet? Well, I've got a little story here. So in 2011, when I was, you know, still very new to game design, I guess, I kind of made the slightly foolhardy decision to venture over to Essen from Australia with a bunch of prototypes, and we caught up there. And it was just like a big, I want to try and kick this into the next gear, and I've just got to meet some of these publishers. And so I'd never met anyone from any of the European publishers before, and I just kind of flew over and tried to set up meetings. It was pretty exciting. But as I was walking around Essen, completely overwhelmed by everything, I saw there was a signing booth, and it would have been at the Kosmos booth, and Klaus Teuber was signing, you know, Catan stuff. And, you know, as a new designer, obviously Klaus Teuber is someone you greatly look up to. And I'm not normally like, I wouldn't normally go up to a signing booth. That's not sort of my style, I guess. But I was just like, oh, Klaus Teuber, this is a moment. So I went up to him and I had him sign something, and I just said to him, oh, Klaus, I've come all the way from Australia to try and sell my games. That's why I'm here. And he was like, oh, well, I wish you all the best, kind of thing. And he signed. So that was a really nice like moment for me, just to like meet him, but also just to like touch base with the industry, that seems so distant from me. Yeah.
I mean, there's a few that come to my mind. I mean, one person I would have wished to have met, and I unfortunately I never will, is Sid Saxon, who was a British game designer who died quite a while ago now, actually. But he's the designer of Can't Stop, for example, along with hundreds of other games. But I'm not sure if you've read his books, Phil, for example, like A Gamut of Games.
Yeah. I've got a really cool old printing of it.
Yeah, and of course Acquire as well. Like, I mean, yeah, he's sort of a giant.
He's the guy. He's the dude.
But I love his writing, actually. I think, and there's something about I'm an academic, and he's slightly, I think, academic in the way he approached games or sort of exploring games and how they're connected with each other and how they develop in different parts of the world. And I haven't seen really anything like that since, in a way, or that kind of dedication to that. And I would have, I just know he would have been an amazing person to sort of talk with about games generally and design. And I think that would have been, I mean, thankfully we can still read his books. So I'm quite happy with that. And there was one other person, which is not actually necessarily in the board game industry, but is a little bit connected to adventure games, is some people you might know the Lone Wolf kind of choose your own adventure books, possibly. And I got to meet Joe Deaver, who's the author of those books. And that for me was probably one of the formative kind of gaming adjacent experiences, because I can still remember reading the first book when I was probably 6 or 7 or something like that. And that the library, I was in a small country town in Australia, and the library had, I think, the first 3 books. And it was really frustrating, because I'd always see, like, because you could see in the front of the book, like, oh, there are all these other books, but I could never find them. And that for me, I was obsessed with them. And actually over the next 10 years, really, I would hunt in Australia to find the rest of the books, because they were really hard. I'm not sure if you had experience.
I still have the first one, but yeah, I looked for them in like secondhand bookshops. And
yeah, exactly. Every time I would go to Sydney, I would like go to it. I would duck into every secondhand bookshop, and it was so exciting, because when you would find one of these, because they were mostly published in the UK, so they would kind of come over and when you found one, you just felt, and like it would sometimes, and you would also have to find the right one, because if you already had the one that you found, then it would be. But I eventually, over probably about 10 years, I managed to get the first 20, which was anyway. So like that's the kind of level of experience, like that kind of formative experience for me. And yeah, he was at a UK convention 2 or 3 years ago, and it was sort of interesting, because this convention was slightly role playing. It was a bit of a mix, not just board games. And they have a Lone Wolf role playing game that he was sort of promoting. And actually, I didn't know, and he died the next year, very sadly.
Oh man.
So I didn't know it at the time, and I got the role playing game, and he signed one of the books, and yeah, he was really just like, I got to tell him like how much it really did mean to me, like that, from that time. And I still go online. I'm not sure if you can get all the books are online for free, actually. You really? Can
as like
no, as actually you can do it in the browser. Yeah, playable in the browser, basically, but with all the original artwork as well. Like it was, he was very generous. Basically, it's called Project Aeon, AON or AEON, and he allowed them to essentially host these online, and they're still there for the first 20 books. And every now and then I go back and do play a little bit and look through it.
So I remember, I got into the fighting fantasy books before that, just because they were the ones I found first. And I remember when I found Lone Wolf, the budding game designer in my brain was like, these are better designed. Like something new, like these are better designed. Like the system is better. Like I don't think I could have articulated it, but I was just like really impressed.
Yeah, I mean, of course, it's the how ideas improve over time, right? It's a difference between, the fighting fantasy that's just completely, never existed before, and yeah, but Joe definitely took that and realized that having this interconnected story and was so powerful. And I definitely that might be something I would. There are some very nice maps. There's still an Italian guy who now still does all the maps and things, because they had these beautiful maps in the front. I'm not sure you remember. And I would definitely like to get one of those for my wall one day. It's still my number one IP that I would love to make a game for one day.
Well, Lone Wolf Adventure Games crossover.
Oh, well, there you go. That is true. So
get on it, Kosmos. Get on it. Yeah. Call the Joe Deaver estate.
Yes. Yeah.
Which came first, Dungeon or Monochrome? Would you change anything about either of them? Well, I guess technically Dungeon came first because sort of the prototype of the system, which we ended up settling on, was like a stripped back version of the Dungeon, essentially. So when Kosmos signed it, they basically wanted us to expand that and then come up with a second one, and Matt kind of came up with Monochrome then. Would I change anything about either of them? I mean, that's a hard question because they're not perfect. Like, they're the first run through. And even just finishing up number 4 recently, I think we've refined a few things. But, it's one of those things where you can't get to, point B without starting at point A. You kind of have to try things and explore a system once you've created it. So I'm really happy with the Dungeon as a product, and I really like the art and I really like the way it turned out. So I mean, there's nothing that glaringly jumps out at me that, I wish that wasn't the way it was. What about you?
No, not particularly. Maybe for Monochrome, there's a bit more of I won't spoil it, but for those who have played, the chair is a very
the chair. Yeah,
even Phil knows is that.
It's funny though, because you know why the chair came about? It came about because the system was so streamlined and simple. We needed to find bad things that could happen to you, and the game is so simple that there's only so many bad things that can happen to you as a player in the game. And so I think that idea you came up with for the chair was a cool new bad thing that could happen. It just might be a bit too bad.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, and it is definitely a bit hard if you're at lower player counts. Definitely, it has sort of an outside effect. So yeah, I think that would probably be the only thing. But I mean, that being said, it's a memorable thing. Everybody remembers it. But apart from that, I think no, I'm pretty happy with how they worked out. I'm a bit jealous I didn't have as many cool NPCs that the Dungeon has. I think I would have, because we did develop them kind of in parallel, right? We didn't really talk to each other much about what we were working on. And I think that's what I always love in the Dungeon, especially. I think that those NPCs are really cool. I would have loved to put that. But of course, it's nice that you have that variety. So.
What's next? Well, Volcanic Island is about to come out in English, the next adventure game, and then not long after that, the 4th one will come out, at least in Germany,
which is called Hotel Abaddon. They have put the cover out. So
yep. So you can, I believe it's Grand.
Oh, sorry, Grand
Abaddon Hotel, right? Well, Look, word order changes in different translations anyway. But think of it as a cross between Grand Budapest Hotel and The Exorcist. Yeah.
Although for family still.
For family. Okay. And Ghostbusters. Yeah, whatever. What's next for you apart from those 2 products?
I have a game with Pegasus called Web of Spies that will come out later this year. We've just kickstarted Monumental, or the expansion to Monumental.
So are you living in an ivory mansion now?
No.
Post Monumental?
Contrary to popular belief, it doesn't always work out like that. no. I'm glad it did reasonably well. And what else is there? There are a few things which haven't really been announced. I mean, I think, to be honest, all the planning of releases is all a bit up in the air in terms of games at the moment. So I think those are the main things that are kind of certain. There might be a few more games that are released this year, but I don't really know what's going to happen, actually. What about yourself?
Yeah, same. Like nothing, unfortunately, that's like locked in. I guess one thing that's been talked about is another game with CMON called Monolith, which is like sort of an abstract family weight strategy game. But the cool thing about it is you're like building ancient monuments with these like big plastic 3D blocks. So it's kind of like a bit Tetris-y, like you're building with like it's like a 3D Tetris kind of feel. But also it feels a little bit like, I don't know, I see some sort of Imhotep influences have come through a little bit as well. So yeah, that even if you don't like it, it's going to look pretty amazing.
And we also have a game with Cranio together, which has been announced, which I think is now called Machination.
Yeah, although I don't think that's necessarily going to be the final title, but yeah, so another sort of family puzzly strategy game.
Yeah, it's a cute little. Yeah, I think it's a cute little game. Actually, it also sort of came out of the same sort of brainstorming as the adventure games, essentially the same kind of time. So that's nice.
Yeah. What a fertile period that was.
Well, indeed. Hopefully, it won't be the end of it. So I'll just keep hounding you until you make like the next Silver and Gold. So I'll just bring it up in every context. Until.
Well, we've been talking for a while, so we should probably. And
I think everyone's probably sick of us. So.
Yeah, it's the end of the questions too.
Well, I hope everyone's enjoying the virtual expo, however that is.
Yeah, enjoy the virtual expo. Go and like demo some games and whatever else you can do.
And try the adventure games if you get a chance.
Yeah.
With the app, always with the app.
Oh yeah, the app's so good. So good. The voice acting.
Yeah.
On the apps is like, wow. Yeah, really great.
Next level. Yeah.
Well, cool. I should let Pearl say goodbye too. Oh, Pearl.
There's the thumbnail for the video right there.
Pearl. Okay, well, thanks for listening to us, everybody. Thanks for being interested in our games, and I hope you have a great, UK Games Expo.
Yeah, thanks very much. Bye.